Welcome to Built from Scratch. On this show, I interview entrepreneurs under 30 to hear about the stories of their initial success. My goal is to encourage the next generation of leaders to take action and make a difference. I'm Eric Libby, and on today's episode, we have entrepreneur Collin Topolski with Acreage Farms. Originally from Syracuse, New York, Collin has been combining his passion for innovation with hands-on experience in both tech and engineering. Currently a PhD candidate at Embry-Riddle, Collin's professional background includes internships as a front-end developer and a mechanical engineer where he specialized in CAD drawings. His company, Acreage Farms, is dedicated to developing novel solutions to tackle the inefficiencies of vertical farming. His work has led him to compete in several pitch competitions, winning thousands of dollars to advance his ideas. Collin is just 27 years old. Collin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Looking forward to it. So our first question we always dive into on this show, Collin, just to really get a sense of who is behind the entrepreneur, is what the childhood looked like for you. Like, did you have that entrepreneurial spirit around you, like your parents, your background? What did it look like when you were growing up?
Yeah, so I don't know that I would say I had a lot of like entrepreneurial networks around me. My dad is a plumber that I guess I got to see that side because he did his own side work. And so, how do you actually deal with people and, set up your own connections? How do you get your own jobs, things like that. Otherwise, like when I was in, I don't know when it was, like middle school through high school, somewhere in there, for like my orchestra, we'd have to sell like candy bars and things.
Okay.
So I did do a pretty good job with that. I'd also have times where I'd like sell off my lunch items. So I don't know, it's just small things around I would experience.
So you're with your dad being a plumber, was it his own company that he started?
It was both. So he had his own company, which he
Okay.
still does on the side, and then he has like at the time he also had like a day job too, doing the
Gotcha.
same.
So did you understand like when you were growing up? Because I'm assuming you said this was like when you were very young, he was
Oh
doing
yeah,
this as
he
well.
still does it. Yeah.
Okay. So did you understand like, okay, like here, like, did you see that vantage point of here are the business components? Like you have like the industry as a plumber, right? But
Yeah.
right, you have the marketing, you have the sales, you have the operations component. Could you see that from a young age, or was it too far?
I looking back, I definitely appreciate it. I think a lot more it's like how to talk with people, how to like that like respect between people and how it works, because it's not just his own job but also seeing like the people around him were also in the trade field. So it was more so like seeing that whole perspective and kind of how they went about things, but not in the moment, no.
Didn't think about it too much.
Yeah.
Cool. So you mentioned a couple things. You had a couple candy bars, a few other, selling things at lunch, like those initial entrepreneurial, they were endeavors. Probably you didn't think much of it at the time. I would imagine you didn't think much of it. It was just kind of what you were doing.
Yeah.
Walk me through, if you can go back into that mind, like what were you thinking about? What were some of those what did it entail, those entrepreneurial endeavors?
A lot of it just how to, I guess, talk to people, entice people to, want to buy a product. I don't know, there's a lot of the social interaction there I enjoyed.
Mhm. So it started out just mainly almost how to sell. Like here, like, hey, I have something you have that you may want. Then you got to try and convince them to get it.
Yeah, I never thought it'd be like, oh, I'm going to go down the business route, but
Yeah.
I guess it kind of worked out that way.
Yeah. So it very unique because some of the other guests that I've interviewed have all started with some sort of entrepreneurial experience when they were a kid. They had maybe a grandparent or a parent, or they were selling stuff at garage sales from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
From what I've seen, Collin, you have a very unique story how you came here. So I'd love to transition into some of the initial projects that you were working on that,
Sure.
from what I'm seeing, kind of built those foundational blocks to get closer to the company that you have today. So just notably, I found this on your LinkedIn page. If anyone's listening, go to Collin's LinkedIn page. Some of these, I couldn't even pronounce some of the things that were in these project lists, but three notable ones in there. So a small group study on a new way to navigate around Mars using a quadricopter-esque design. Did I get that? Was that?
Yeah, that was like that's how I started. Yeah.
Crazy. I'm going to read these other two, and I'd love to tell you, for you to tell me your experience with them. But then the next one was designed a 3D printed structure that held a medical experiment for the effects of Blue Origin. And then the third one is a 3D printed clinostat conducting experiments on microgravity experiments on different organisms such as, I don't even want to try that, to be honest, man. You got to say that for me.
Oh, geez, which one? Oh, Arthrospira platensis.
There you
It's
go.
probably, yeah.
So a lot of this stuff I see because with the industry that you went into, a lot of this, I mean, I kind of see this pattern forming. So, I mean, give kind of the listeners like a little bit of background. What are these almost maybe the skill set and your learnings that you had during these projects?
Yeah, so actually, when I first came to Embry-Riddle, I kind of came with that mindset of I just knew that I wanted to do something related to like Mars research. So before I even like, I think before my first day, I already found a club I wanted to contact. Already was reaching out to them, trying to figure out what they do, and they kept saying like, "Well, just hold on, like semester hasn't started yet. Like, let's get in here." So then once I got started there, I was learning about new projects, and there was one they were starting up. It ended up getting taken like outside of the club, and so that was that Mars copter. That really just kind of started my research career. So it was really just trying to take an idea. How could you take a drone within lava tunnels on Mars? What could you find, and how would you go about that? Through that, it's always networking is really what I've learned is where that gets you like to your next steps. And so that really just leapfrogged me ahead in terms of my skill sets, what I was able to learn. Uh, because of I was doing that project, that actually spun out into being on a subcontract for a phase two SBIR, which was doing, it's not, I don't know if I have it listed
For the
off.
listeners, for context, SPIR, could you define?
Oh, I don't even, small business innovation.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Gotcha.
But so that was with Honeybee Robotics. And so that was for a steam-based propulsion system as like a moonhopper. So the Mars copter, although like we didn't go very deep into it, it like kind of got me into the next opportunity. So that was like my first stepping stone. And then while I was there, other professors that were around at the time, because of our work that we were already doing, I ended up, I think I have to reword it actually on there. I have to go double check. But the Blue Origin project, so we had it was a 3D printed structure that we were housing a medical experiment in. And so I was part of the engineering team doing that design work. And then one of the main student leads, VJ, that was like his part of his dissertation, actually.
Okay.
So it was really neat to see all that. And then going into the clinostat, so that ended up starting right before my master's. I actually like made a crude 3D printed model, and then I tested it over in Poland on a summer abroad in like this mock space habitat. And then coming back from that, we had a new professor came in, Dr. Ugo Castillo, and so I started working with him around this time as well. And so we've done further iterations on that device. That ended up forming my basis for my master's thesis, and it's to simulate microgravity effects on bacteria. So we mostly did like E. coli, but we've explored many different organisms as well.
Crazy. So just kind of curious, because I haven't worked on a project like this before, going into like a major research on like a science base. How does like even that first one, how does that initially form? Is it just group of people? Is it more like, all right, hey, we're doing this thing, anyone interested? And then you start getting almost like interviewed as like a candidate to work on the project? Or like what does that exactly look like?
I think Embry-Riddle is a little different because of its how I guess small it is relative to some really large schools. So I think like if you're willing to get onto these opportunities, all you have to do is ask, or if you do well on other opportunities, people notice and then they'll come to you. Is kind of what happened because professors will talk as well.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to think. I mean that the first opportunity, it was definitely just I wanted to be involved. I reached out. I started working with a student that was already around for a couple of years, I want to say. And then from there, it's just could we meet that was interested in this? I don't even remember how we did outreach at that point. But we just started forming a team. We would interview people,
Mhm.
like see if they were actually interested and want to put the time into it.
So it's just that first one, you said networking was the big learning lesson that you had, and then this goes into number two and three. So you start
Yeah.
and then it's just and it's like, okay, they see your success on that first one, and then it comes into like, okay, we want to have Collin around for the Blue Origin project. Is that kind of how it
Yeah, that
transpired?
one in particular, it had I forgot how many were involved, but it was a smaller subset than who were originally a part of the first project.
Wow. And how, I'm curious, more on like tying it into the business side, how similar is a project like this when you're trying to go, because you're trying to test a theory, you have a hypothesis and you want to go test against something or create an innovation. I would imagine from the outside it's similar to creating like almost the inception of a business. How comparable was this experience to actually starting a company?
Uh, I Honestly, it's very similar, at least how we went about it, because most, not, well, at least half the projects I've been a part of, it's always like, oh, could we spin this into a business? Like, what would the economics of that look like? Who would be interested? And so, although like the research didn't necessarily turn into a business, I don't think any of the times. Um, like especially the clinic set, that was the closest one I was looking at doing as a business. But it was just something that I guess kept reoccurring, right? And so I knew as I was going through these projects, I wanted to get down that entrepreneurial road and like, okay, I want to do something on my own, like that's going to be my own business. So eventually we got to here.
Got to this point, right? So let's dive into your founding of Acreage Farms. So in August of 2022 is what I saw is when you first launched Acreage Farms. You have all these experiences, they lead up to this point, and I'm going to read the mission statement just so our listeners can kind of get that thinking about that. So it says Acreage Farm believes in restoring the environment by using sustainable technology to deliver the freshest produce possible to local communities. So you go through all this experience and you realize, I want to start a company. I want it to be something that innovates, that changes the way we do things as a society. So really, Collin, first, what problem is Acreage Farms solving?
Yeah. Okay. So first to get into that, what we were initially looking to do, I guess behind the name, we were looking to actually have our own farm. And so we incorporated right away. We also wanted to submit an SBIR application to the USDA. And so we just had to incorporate so that we could do all of that. But really what we ended up quickly learning is the fastest way to try to help sustainable agriculture and urban agriculture is to solve a problem that's helping the industry at large versus like starting our own small farm and trying to grow that from there. And so we very quickly started focusing on the technology that would be able to monitor these indoor vertical farms. And so ideally what we're doing is able to help the growth or help understand the growth environment for these farmers so they can improve their output. They can get better yields. They can reduce the cost that's going into their farms, and as well as like shift their labor towards more impactful tasks than like surveying, for instance, and try to limit some of that time.
I'm
Yeah.
curious on the pot. So I had a chance for the time today. I did a deep dive into vertical farming, and again, like I said, I'm not knowledgeable on the subject at all, but it was pretty cool. I mean, I was looking at some of these like indoor facilities, and
Yep.
so just curious. I mean, it seems very efficient. What are the positives and negatives of this? Because this is like a new technology for a lot of farmers. Why would they be hesitant to go in that direction?
Yeah, so the biggest negative is the upfront cost that it takes to start up these farms because it ends up being like a unit economics problem. And so you have to have a massive farm in order for it to end up panning out well. However, that requires a lot of money. And so this industry has seen a lot of VC money go into it. And it ended up being poorly managed. And so then a lot of these very large profile companies ended up going under. There was actually one that was just announced like 2 days ago, I think it was.
Okay.
And so that's really a big issue. There are still many farms that are doing well, especially something that doesn't get looked at enough is like how different countries are doing in this industry. Right now, we only really look at the US, but from what I've understood, Japan's doing really well. So there's definitely a lot of the good side is when you can manage it properly and you have it, working as best as possible, it is a benefit to the surrounding area.
Gotcha. I'm thinking like when you're talking about these VC firms, and I mean, on my end, I'm thinking just the amount of capital. So I have a service-based business. So really the capital is like it's people, and people can be expensive, but this is like investment in technology and something completely new and different. And you have to, I mean, I just imagine the barrier to entry is like extremely difficult. So I'm just curious. I mean, you've been at this 2 years. How do you have the funding, or what funding is required to start a business like this?
Yeah, so we've been bootstrapping everything.
Okay, incredible.
We first started, so again, we incorporated in that August 2022 just so we could get that SBIR out. We were working on the idea, but we weren't like actively trying to, I guess, be a business truly, because of our other tasks in life that we were doing. But we submitted off the SBIR knowing it was going to get denied, but we were just hoping to get feedback from people that were, in the industry to start getting our foot in the door. So that actually worked out well for us. We did get denied that part, it's fine. But We got to learn a lot from the people that are in the industry. So
Yeah.
that was really good. While that was happening, I started getting the business acumen training, using the Center for Innovation Entrepreneurship, the SCORE program. I just started, trying to learn from wherever I could about business in general. I have no idea. Just I do my engineering work and, uh, so I tried to do a lot of that. And then in November, we had the Trep Expo at Embry-Riddle. We ended up winning first in our category for that. And that was just a poster pitch competition of our idea. And so that was like bare bones, original thought idea, like from a
Yeah.
textbook, more or less, as we're trying to navigate that. And then come March, we ended up winning, it was second place in
It's like
Embry-Riddle's lab.
5,000, wasn't it?
Yeah, that
5,000,
one was
6,000.
5,000.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
nice.
Yep. So that ended up being very, very helpful. So in this time, we started at this point, we were not only working on our better prototype, but we were also improving our SBIR, building off what we submitted before so we could submit for the next one. And around as all this was happening, we actually ended up getting our office in the ERU Microplex. And so that's where I'm at right now. But
Okay. Oh, cool.
uh,
So you have your own physical like store, like
yes.
so people can come in and okay, very
Yeah.
nice.
And so from there, I think that helped solidify us more professionally for the SBIR process. Plus, we developed our idea a lot further. We started getting involved in other projects and programs, and we were trying to learn as much as possible and improve. And so we ended up getting lucky enough to get selected for the phase one SBIR, and then that was 175,000 that we're using right now. So that's an 8-month contract that we're
Wow.
halfway through as of November 1st. And so we're looking to convert that for next year, and then that'll shift into a 2-year contract from there.
So at some point you have to pay this back, or is this given as like like how does that exactly work?
So the grant process, when you go through SBIRs or STTRs, they go through different government entities. They're
Okay.
completely like
Wow.
they're
Okay.
just money to use for the research and
Yeah.
development. It is for the intent to commercialize a product, though. And that's actually something that when I've been talking, I try to keep tabs with my program manager a lot. And something she had mentioned is a lot of companies, they don't do the business work. They just work on, just the technology, but they don't do like the customer discovery. They don't attend conferences. And so there's a lot of side work that needs to get done while you're doing your own technology development.
I'm curious. You made a point about a minute ago about the business experience, and you come from a background more on the like research, development, technology, science based. What have been your first steps? Like, say someone is coming from that side and they're really trying to learn business. Now you've had 2 years of like working on the company. Where would
Yep.
you suggest somebody starts for that?
So I guess it depends on what resources you have around you as a student. There are a lot of resources that the school hosts. If you're not a student, then like for instance, there's a SCORE program that I think is nationwide. So that's always a good spot to start. That's how we started.
Has that been pretty helpful for you? Because there's like
It-
they're mentors in specific industries, right? So you have like
yeah.
marketing, sales,
Yeah,
like
so it can be a little difficult depending on the industry you're looking for. I think really the big thing though is it's about taking the step in the right direction. So I think just in general, learning what you need to like you need to start opening your eyes and see what's actually out there. And I think that if anything, it's a good first step. So like you can now learn about business plans and business development, what different types of businesses, how they're acting, the different mentors that are out there, if they have networks of people to help you. It can really leapfrog you into other opportunities.
gotcha. Yeah, I think that's helpful when first starting. You may have some product idea and it's just like this crazy invention, like this would be so cool if it can solve it. But if you don't know where to start, you're in a, I would imagine, especially for you, Collin. I mean, given that you're thousands and thousands of dollars of money behind this, I mean, it's like you could be going on a way tangent if you don't have those people that are backing you in your corner. The other thing I was going to mention is talking about the customer discovery. You mentioned that as like how to actually do the customer discovery.
Yep.
How have you gone about acquiring those first few customers or getting that interest with a product like this?
Yeah, so I guess rule number one for customer discovery, you can't talk about your product. You just have to talk to people and learn from their experience. And so, but you have to find the right people. So you have to find the people that will end up being the ones doing the purchasing decision, or you need to start looking around and see what the general industry looks like. So we had to learn vertical farming as a whole, the greenhouse market. And so we're still actively learning. There's never enough learning to do. But we would just search on LinkedIn, for instance, or we would go to specific companies. We would just go to the general email and just say like, hey, it helps when you're a student and you can say, hey, I'm a student. I'm just trying to learn about the industry. Could I have, 10 minutes to ask you a couple questions? And you just want the questions to guide you in understanding, like, is the path you're going down, is that sounding like it's a good idea? Are you getting good indicators from people? Ideally, you're not talking about your idea, but you're at least validating it internally that, okay, so they're having an issue with this. Yes, we're solving that. They're using this as a current solution that's a competitor, or maybe it's a close competitor. How is that acting? Did they spend a lot for it? What are their problems specifically? You can start navigating what's unique about what you're trying to offer versus how they're currently going about it.
How long is your sales process? Because like for us, we're a home service company, we can have a customer call us and then close the job and get the job on the schedule, and that could take 10 minutes of time. What
Yep.
does your sales process look like to get from beginning to end of that process?
Yeah, so we're gonna have to still figure that one out. That's what we're trying to use the USDA funds and convert it into our phase two. That's where we really switch into the commercialization side of technology. Right now it's tinkering. How do we have a proper prototype into an MVP? It's probably going to be a bit of a process, but from how I understand the industry, it's as long as you can demonstrate that you have a lot of validation in your product. Ideally, you can get a pilot study or a few going, and that's what we're trying to figure those initial partners out, see where we can get our foot in the door, show that what we're doing is helpful for those industries or for those different companies, and then hopefully expand from there. I imagine the sales cycle will be a little lengthy, but the more in depth we can get into the industry, I think it's going to help shorten that.
Absolutely. So a lot of it right now is that testing phase. How do you go from where you're at now to actually monetizing and like becoming a profitable business? Do you see that as like, that's like, I mean, investing all this time into technology 5 years, 10 years out, or is there like a closer, like, where do you see that kind of fitting in, I suppose?
Yeah. So what I'm hoping to see happen is that we get our first pilot studies into next year, and then through ideally we can also convert into phase two. So that'll help. At least we're getting funding to continue on that route. But by doing that, ideally within a year to 2 years time frame, we can try to work on actually getting the first like official paying client. There's just a lot of kinks to work out before we can get up to that point to ensure that not only is the system actually functioning, but how do they interact with it? Is it actually, what they can take? Because a lot of the problem is you can provide data to farms, and that's what a lot of companies do, but they don't tell the farms like what to do now that they have that data. And
Mhm.
so it's really showing, like making sure that they can take action based off of what you're telling them.
I'm
So it's, yeah.
I'm curious right now how much time, because I mean, you're with Embry-Riddle as a graduate, would it consider a graduate assistant, I think is what it is.
So I'm no, well, yeah. So I
Kind
I
of
did stop
asterisks.
doing the teaching with chemistry.
Okay.
I'm actually being funded right now from my advisor to keep on doing the research side. So it's, I guess, more just like as a graduate research assistant.
Okay.
But usually at the tail end of your PhD, hopefully you're able to find funding to just work on the research so you can finish it up.
Gotcha. I'm curious, like so with that and now your business,
Mhm.
what does your what does the workday look like? I mean, how much time are you spending into this? And I think it's helpful again as the up and coming entrepreneur that wants to start this. It's like what sacrifices, how much time do you need to be spending? So kind of paint that picture for us.
Yeah, so it's definitely changed a lot since when I first started the idea and how things developed. It's always a lot of time, no matter what, though. It's just what proportion are you spending on different projects. Something I learned too, the analogy, usually like it's about juggling many tasks. I like the one now, it's how many plates you spin,
Mhm.
because you can let one slow down a little bit and then you can come back and spin it up again. So you change how much time you spend on different areas. But let's see. So in the beginning, it was definitely a lot more like I would have my teaching. I would have more so like all the daytime was taken for like regular classes, schoolwork, research work, and then kind of just the evenings. That's when I could try to do whatever type of prototyping or research into the company itself. And I'm at the point now that I'm on the tail end of the PhD. I'm doing a lot more, and that we have this SBIR. A lot of my time now is it's flipping. So now it's going into the business, trying to make sure this is going to turn out successful, and then a lot of my experiments have slowed down, and so now it's more on the data analysis, writing out the dissertation. So a lot of it I'm able to do remotely, and so I just kind of find time where I can to get in the creative spirit to write.
Do you find yourself thinking about Acreage Farms like every hour of the day? Like you wake up thinking like, okay, this is what we got to do today. We got to keep moving. We got to keep making progress.
In different ways. I try to see, I like, so the reason I even got into business, I guess, and wanted to be in this mindset is because I like all the different pieces that can connect and all the different, web of a network. And um, I like seeing that from the top side. And so I think about it a lot, definitely, but I try to think about it in unique ways. So it's not just like, what am I doing today? But it's like, what if I do this now, what can that look like in the future? Or what's a way, not necessarily to pivot, but what could be an interesting way to maneuver in the future? Because I do want to stay in this industry for a long time. And I do want to see out different directions over time. So
Okay.
I do think about it a lot. I try not
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
weekends, but
Try your best. No, that's as a business owner, that's just what it's part of what we sign up for. It's, we're taking on the risk. So it's like there sometimes our business, it just doesn't rest on the weekends. Like it just doesn't. It
yeah,
just doesn't
there's
stop. It
times
just
it
keeps
can't.
it
Yep.
keeps going. So I'd love to, as we are kind of winding down our time here, Colin, go into the lessons of entrepreneurship that you've had. So I think one big thing that I've realized is how, in a sense, volatile it is. As the entrepreneur, you're up and down, and you have great times where you're maybe making a bunch of progress, and then you go through several trials, and it's like, wow, it's been 2, 3, 4 weeks, it's been 3 months, and we're not moving to where we need to. I'm
Yep.
curious for you, what have you done when things are going very well? Like, what are those habits, actions that you're taking when you're on fire, you're killing it? And then the second question will be more towards what happens when you're struggling and how you get out of that. So let's start with that. You are crushing it, you're on fire, you're making a lot of progress in the research, data, etc.
Yeah. Honestly, it's keep on keeping on. I forget there's one quote, but it's like Kobe or something with like job's not finished. You got to keep doing it. You
Job's
can
not
lose,
done.
you got to
Job's
show
not
up. You
done.
can lose, you got to show up. And that's, when you're killing it, you got to keep showing up. It only, the high lasts for so long, and you do want to ride that when you can. And so I try my best, especially like when I'm feeling on top of it, just try to spend my time in a productive way that like, okay, if I do this thing, it's going to lead to this outcome, I can then move on. And I try to make sure the whole team's able to move forward as best as possible. Yeah, I mean, and then there's definitely times that you don't have those highs, and you have to find a way to definitely take some time and, recuperate, but then you do have to come back to it. Uh,
What does that look like when you get into those ruts? Like what are you doing to get out of it? Because we've obviously we're alive today, so we've
yeah,
seen both sides. When you
yep.
go through that period, is there any specific actions that you take that, maybe it's as simple as clear my mind, I need to go on a walk, or I need to go exercise, or I need to like write down like my long-term vision of where my life needs to go. Like what
Yep.
are you doing to get out of that?
Actually, yeah, a lot of those. So I do try to get out and walk around a bit more now and like clear my head. I'll go take like a notebook with me, or try to get down like what I learned too is like your head can be like a computer with the RAM. So like if you have too many thoughts going on, your RAM's clogged, then you got
Your
to,
your
write
your
things down
computer's
and get,
overheating. It's
yeah.
overheating, and then it's just slowing down. Yeah.
Yeah, so you got to really get your ideas out there. Just get it on paper. You can always come back to it, but get the idea on paper. So I try to do that and just recalibrate. What are my actual priorities looking forward? What are my immediate concerns? What are things in the distance I do need to worry about, but I can put off for now. And that way I can free up some of that like mental capacity and just work on the things at hand. So yeah, definitely walks. I try to do a to-do list for like my immediate tasks, but I do try to log like why am I doing something? What is my overall picture looking like? What are the overall tasks I want to do? There's a book I like, it's a 12-week year, where you try to do all your tasking in increments of 12 weeks versus like a 1 year, because usually people have like a New Year's resolution. And so the idea is you pick a few overarching goals, and then you start breaking those down into your tasks. And then as long as you're working towards those things, every day, week in, week out. Ideally, by the end of 12 weeks, you've hit those goals, but you want to, still keep them a little lofty. But it's trying to, I guess, keep things as organized as possible.
Do you like Elon Musk or somewhat? Okay.
Somewhat. I mean, I pay attention to him.
At least one of the
I
things that
try. Yeah.
he refers to as like if something's going to take 5 years and you set a goal for two, it'll take three, right? So we I think we do that as people is we kind of I don't know what law it is. You may know some law. It's like we'll extend out.
Yeah.
It'll take exactly as much time as we allow it to take. And so if we
Yeah.
let it take a year, then all the things that could have gotten done in a quarter in those 12 weeks extend out to a year just because we're just we're casually just going along and slowing down. So
Yep.
that's good. I've actually heard that book before. I haven't read it. Would you recommend it?
I would, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think for the sense of understanding, like maybe how to set up your scheduling, I think it's a very good insight because a lot of times you just hear like, oh, have a to-do list or just have a general like a why list or something and look at that. But I think that that one helps you better align like, okay, how should I set up my time and
Mhm.
work towards my goals?
More structure and organized.